Welcome to the Great Loop Aboard the Perch. I'm Kim Russo, the director of America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. And today we are continuing on the Illinois Waterway. We're heading south on leg 66 of the Great Loop from Peoria to Beardstown. If you caught our last leg, you know we tied up overnight at the Illinois Valley Yacht Club, also known as the Ivy Club. They're an AGLCA sponsor, and we enjoyed our stay there. But we were up bright and early and ready to tackle some more of the Illinois Waterway. We left Ivy Club with another one or two looper boats. We knew there were others who had stayed at different places in Peoria, anchorages, or other docks, so we expected to have a big looper group for the day as we continued south. We stayed a little bit on the north side of Peoria, so of course one of the first things we saw was the city of Peoria. That is the city dock there. There were a few loopers who spent the night there, but they had already dropped the lines and headed out, so it was looking pretty empty that morning. But that's okay, because we would all meet up in the Peoria Lock. You can see lots of recreational vessels in there. Most of them were loopers, if not all. Don't recall the actual number, but I think we had 15 to 18 boats tied up there in the lock. So that was fun to see. And as we finished our lock through, we all continued our way south. There's a little bit of a look as we were leaving the lock. And of course, one of the fun things after that is we were traveling in a big group. So as we were kind of a little bit in the middle of the pack, but as we looked behind us, we could see a pretty big looper flotilla following along there. This is also an area where you do have to be cautious about Asian carp. And when I say cautious, there's not much you can do about them, but there are certain boats that seem to really stimulate the jumping of the Asian carp. If you're not familiar with Asian carp, this is an invasive species that has been migrating north on the inland river systems. It's why the electric fish barrier we saw a few legs ago outside of Chicago is there to try and prevent them from their continued migration. They just, at certain boat sounds, they jump high out of the water, and some boats have reported Asian carp actually landing in the cockpit or on the deck somewhere, and that's kind of a mess. They're pretty thin-skinned, and it just kind of makes a mess when the Asian carp land there on the boat. But if you haven't seen them jumping, just kind of Google that and you'll get a good view of them. There's lots of video of Asian carp jumping. So we and several other looper boats are headed for Logsden Tug Service. That's where we'll tie up for the night. This is not a dock per se. This is actually a tug service that, the tugboat you see pushing the barges down the waterway. It is a company that provides that service, but they have some barges there and will allow recreational vessels to tie up to them. So there is kind of a limit to how many that they can really accommodate, so we were hoping that they would be able to get everybody in for that night as we continued. As I said, it was a big group. You saw that kind of in the looper flotilla that was a little bit behind us. So everybody's watching on Nebo to see how many boats are already tied up there, and if you're not familiar with Nebo, it is an app that loopers use to see where each other are on the waterways. Of course, it doesn't show boats who aren't subscribed to Nebo, but it does give you a good indication of how many loopers are out there, since it's the app that AGLCA uses exclusively for loopers to find one another. So we were getting ready to approach Logsden there and called on the radio, had some instructions from them on how to go about tying up and paying and all of those things. So last bridge of the day as we crossed under it and headed into Logsden. We ended up rafted 3 deep at Logsden, so that was a little bit interesting, but no problem. They actually had a couple of sections of barge, so most of us were kind of in that large group you see in the video. There were a few tied up where they actually couldn't walk to shore, which we could, and they were not kind of connected to the rest of us. But that was the trip for the day. A moderately long day for the perch. We were underway for about 8 hours. We went just about 70 nautical miles, averaged about 9 knots, and our maximum was about 10 knots. Just that one lock, so we were not delayed very much by any waits for locks or bridges. And that's another look at the overall path. We'll be back with our next lake shortly. Thanks for watching.